everybody, Caleb here in the Rosa String Works workshop. Got an unusual one. I'm not real sure how far I'm gonna get with this, but I'm gonna start it nonetheless. This is a zither. You can see it needs quite a bit of work. It's missing quite a few strings. I've got no idea how this is tuned, how this is played. You know, I know that you strum it or you can pick them, but kind of a new experience for me working on one of these. This thing really needs a lot of work. I'll show you the back. You can see it's cracked in two different places and it's separating in a whole bunch. I think the first thing I really need to do here is get the tension off all of these strings, the ones that are left. I think that'll help relax that wood on the back so we're not pulling it in all weird places. I'll set it down and see what we can figure out on taking these strings off. Well, my current suspicion is that there's probably a correct tool that you use to tune these, and I don't have that. Jerry might have one. I don't know where it is. Seeing as he's not in the shop right now, I think we're just going to use these pliers here. Those are tight. I guess they're supposed to be when they're holding all the string tension. I can't imagine wanting to save any of these strings, so I'll probably end up cutting them once they're loose. I follow up that statement with, I don't know where we're going to get more of these strings to restring this thing. I imagine that's something Jerry would know, and we may even have to order zither strings. I'm kind of paying attention to which way these are strung. I'm worried that most of them are going to be wrapped around the posts one way, and then there's going to be one that's not. And I'll be tightening it rather than loosening it. I guess I'm going to try to get these loose off camera. I'm not going to bother filming the whole thing. It's just going to be a lot of me struggling to get these things to turn. I don't think that there's a better way for me right now. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is the second day of working on this zither. I didn't get a whole lot done yesterday, but I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it either. I learned a little bit about this. Apparently this is a 521 zither, or a 5 and 21. I'm not sure exactly how you say it, but that means that there's 5 chords. There's actually like 5 sets of chords here. So you can play a couple strings and it makes a chord, and then there's 21 individual notes that you can, you play the chord and then you pick single notes or pluck single notes if that's what you're doing. Learn that about this. You can see I kind of dusted it up. I've got the 2 metal bars, the one that runs here and the one that runs up here, off. I did go ahead and straighten out this kind of L-shaped one. It was really bent down on this end, and it's still not the most straight, but before it wouldn't even stay on the track. It kind of looped off. Now it will work for what we need it to now. You can see I've got all the strings off of this finally. They're all sitting back and around. I haven't really cleaned them up yet, but the real thing I'm trying to figure out is how I'm going to attack this back with all the cracks in it, and it's shrunk or moved, one of the two. I'm contemplating taking the whole back of it off. I'm not really sure if it's going to be worth doing that way. Some of these pieces are really only attached in the center, like this one here isn't attached at all at this joint here, and it's coming up in this corner up here. I just can't help but wonder if it'd be easier for me to warm up a knife, knock these glue joints out, and then come back in and glue them down, clamp them up a little better. That being said, I don't know that even if I do that, I'm going to have enough wood to cover the whole back. These gaps are pretty big. I think this wood has shrunk, or we're missing big chips, but the thing is, it looks like it lines up if they would touch. We're just missing huge pieces out of here. So that's really my decision that I need to make, is how I'm going to tear this apart. or if I am going to tear it apart or try to fix it from the state it's in. Well, I've decided I'm going to try to take some of the back off at least these two panels. And depending on how easy that goes, maybe the rest of it. I already started. This one's almost loose. It's stuck here. I've got some tools heating up in the tool oven that Carlos sent us. Thank you again, Carlos. Let that warm up some more. I really almost got this one. I don't want to break it too much because this piece is cracked here and I really don't want to break it off. I'd prefer if it stayed attached. Well, there's one piece. In case you were curious how it was built. What I don't know is whether this is screwed in, and therefore whether I can unscrew it. This way. It looks like they're just driven in. They're just nails. Okay. So how do I get it out? So I've been looking at this. These feet things, they just pry out pretty easily. No big deal. But this is still really stuck along here, you know, in this area. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get it out, or I should even worry about trying to get it off. With this piece off, it's good because we can do a couple of things to fix this back up, like glue this broken piece back on to the rest of it and get it nice and clamped up so it'll stay. What I'm thinking currently is gluing this piece back to this piece. So we'll glue this up, and while that's gluing up, we'll clamp the ends down, get those glued up, get it sitting flat relatively, I think. Shouldn't be a problem. And then we'll bring this back in and press it up against this outside one, because that's where it fits along this curve. It lines up perfectly if you press it this way, but that does leave us with a fairly sizable gap that I guess we'll just have to fill. So anyway, I guess I'm going to get this glued up. Get this piece that broke off glued up. I'm going to at least do that. I'm not sure I see a whole lot of better option than what I'm thinking. Well, I gave this plenty of time to set up, and you can probably see it's now all together as one piece. That piece that was splitting off is no longer splitting off. The next thing I was thinking about doing, you can see here I've got this clamped down flat. There's no glue in here yet. I was just trying to see if this was going to work, where I could get this clamped, as well as the edges clamped flat all at the same time using, you know, this bar here. And I think this is going to work really well. So this way I can put glue all the way across here, get that clamped down flat, and then it will match, because these corners are kind of peeling up as it is. Same with this side. That way it'll just help me kind of decide where to fit this in. You can see now that this is all clamped up. When I put this in here, you maybe can't see it, but you can kind of see there's a gap. I'm hoping pressing these flat might help me, you know, close that gap a little bit, but I really, you know, there's going to be a gap. Basically what I have to decide is on which side I want the gap to be. However, I think that decision has been made for me in regards to this corner. If I press the loose piece up against that piece, there's a ledge. Whereas if I press it up against this piece, there's not. So that is probably what I'll end up having to do. As for this, I guess I'm just going to put some glue in here, glue this up. Worst case scenario, if I decided that was the wrong kind of action, I'll heat up a knife, stick it in there, and break it back loose. It won't be that big of a deal. I just loosened these clamps up, so they're not even snug, but I don't want to take them all the way off because it wasn't the easiest to get them all placed.
Traveling through this world of woe, there is no sadness, no toil, no danger, and that bright land to which I go, I'm going there to see my...
There we go, all cleaned up. So the other side is set up for close to 2 hours, so I figured it was good enough. We could take it off. I'm starting to work on getting this side pressed flat, and this is something I'm going to have to do a little different. This whole end is kind of peeling up this way as well as this way, so I went ahead and clamped this little stick, I guess, on here to push this down. So I'll do this first, and then I'll clamp my big board down just the same way I did with this one. And that'll help keep the whole thing clamped. I think that's going to work. I think it's going to work well. I probably need to turn this around so you can kind of see. I'm going to press this down. This is the part that makes it kind of hard for me to let you see everything while I put glue in it. Get it in there good.
My mother, she said she'd meet me when I come home. I'm just going over Jordan. I'm just going over home.
Well, there it is, all cleaned up and all clamped up. I did end up adding this one here to kind of press it down along that side, and it squeezed out some glue, so that's good. We know we're good and stuck. I'm just going to give this some more time to set up, probably a couple hours, just for the sake of looking at this now. This pops in here. Looking pretty good. I'm still going to have a gap to fill, and that's just the way it's going to be. I'm really not sure how I'm going to go about doing that once I get to doing that. You know, I'd really like to press that up in there and glue it down, but there's this gap here, and I'm trying to color match this kind of blue-ish dark color. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. It is going back together, it's just not quite the simplest puzzle to put back together. I also need to clean out the inside before I go putting it totally back together. Anyways, we'll let this sit for a couple hours before we do the next step. Well, this piece sat up for a couple hours. I went ahead and declamped it. It's looking really good, except for right here, this crack kind of popped open when we were clamping it down, and it lifted up and it didn't glue down. So I put a little glue in it, clamped it down. It should be fine in a little while. Jerry just kind of walked through here and took a look at this, you know, as this was sitting in here, and he said something about how, you know, we can't really, there's not really any way to tighten this up. What he said to do was to push it all the way that way and glue it in. That way we have a straight line, so we can just put one straight fill in. And that's what I'm going to do. I believe I'm ready to do that. I don't know if you can tell, but I cleaned this off. There was some glue on there I ended up scraping off. Anyways, it's clean now. My biggest thing is how I'm going to go about doing this, clamping this, that is. I think I am still going to use this to clamp the ends, hopefully put a little pressure on the center, and then I'll go ahead and put some clamps maybe there and there as well. I think that's how I'm going to go about this. So far that's my best bet, and I guess we'll just see how it goes. I don't see any real downside here, and just gluing it up. Well, this is all clamped up. I think that's all I'm really going to fit in there is those ones. This should help press in the center. It's pushed as far that way as it'll go. I'm going to have to inevitably put something in there to fill that little gap. You can't really see it, but there is a gap over there. This gap is a lot more straight, a lot more even. It does get a little thinner at this end than this end. What are you going to do? But really, yeah, I'm just going to let this dry for a while. Should turn out pretty good. Alright, so this sat up overnight. I looked at this crack here, and it was mostly filled with glue, really. So I went ahead and just put some of the Denver wood filler in there, colored it black. It's still a little wet from me wiping up the filler, but I think it's looking pretty good. The next thing we need to do is actually make a strip. This spot here, I was using our little taper gauge here to get an idea how thick these were, and it's thicker on this side by quite a bit. That's about 135 thousandths, and this side is only about 50 thousandths. Biggest problem here is I'm not sure that it's an even taper. If it was, then I know I could just make, 135 thousandths down to 50 thousandths and it would fit in there, but I'm not 100% sure it's an even taper. Although it looks pretty close. Like it just tapers down. It may be the place to start at least. As for the wood I'm going to use to do this, I'm not sure. Something that looks similar would be good. Or something with long grain lines. That way it would fit in with this pretty well. Because you can really well see the grain running this way. I'll have to go pick something out and figure out how I'm going to taper it like this. And it's going to be a little bit of thinking work before I do anything that you can actually see. So I'll probably bring it back. I'm going to go find me a piece, I guess. Well, at Jerry's suggestion, I got a piece of spruce to fill this gap. You can probably see it's thinner down here than it is down here, and it fits in there. It's still too long and too tall, but I think some of the extra will help me fit it in there a little tighter. Something I might want to do on this is get a couple of pieces to go across, because I'm not going to be able to reach a clamp in, but if I can clamp like this down, that should hold it. So I'm just about ready to glue this in. I'm going to go find some boards to put across to help clamp this down, and then we'll glue that in there.
Said she'd meet me when I come. I'm just going over Jordan.
So I went ahead and pulled the clamps off. It sat up for well over 2 hours. I'm thinking it's probably going to be fine. I went ahead and used the chisel, shaved it down. I even sanded it a little bit to get it good and level. To color match, because the front is a glossy black, so is the sides. I figured the back used to be black, so I ended up just dyeing the whole thing black again. No, I think it's looking really good. The front, the sides, they're glossy black. It was just this that was kind of that weird off blue, which is actually kind of what the dye looks like. The black dye looks like if you dye it, if you use it on the white and don't get enough on there, it turns that kind of blue. So my guess is that this was black at some point. And now it's black again. So, looks good, I think. I'm not really sure where my next step is. Do I need to close this up? Do I need to just string it up? I'm not sure that we have strings for this. We finally talked to Jerry about it, and he says we have some auto harp strings, but there's definitely not enough for all of these. So we'll probably have to order some. The thing about these wire, you know, nut saddle basically, it's where they're noting from. They bend really easy, and until you get strings on them, they're not going to really stay where you want them to. But I think once you do get strings on it, it will stay. We might be able to do a little bit more cleaning to this. It's still a little dusty in spots. I bet some boiled linseed oil, or maybe that new stuff we're using, probably the boiled linseed oil though, will probably work really good on this top. Help clean up some of the spots. We'll see. Well, I'm working on stringing up this zither, and it is quite the process. You can see I've already got quite a few strings on there. I thought I'd show you a little bit of it. So, after talking to the string company, they said that these just go in order. So I'll get the string out, and they start off really thick, and they've been getting thinner as we go that way. So they're loop ends, I don't know if you can see it, but they loop over these little pegs at the back. And to get started, I loop it over there, bring it up front. The problem is with the winds on the string, it won't fit through the peg, the hole in the peg. So I bring it up to, I guess I'm calling this the bridge, or the nut. This metal piece up towards the top where the string rests. So I'll bring it up to essentially the nut, and then I'll mark where the winds cross over a little bit behind it. So everything past that I'm going to take the winds off of, and they give me a lot of extra string, so I'll cut some extra length off. To get the winds off of it, we found that heating up that section just helps soften it, and we can pull most of it off. So I'll put it in the little grip here. So I've got my string in my grips here. My Sharpie mark is just about centered. That's kind of where I like to keep it. So the next thing I'll do is I'll get the torch and I'll heat up this part. I'll try to show you that. I like to do it off of the table, so I'm not risking much catching them out. I don't have as good a grip on that as I'd like, of course. Alright, now we're good gripped. So I'll kind of hold the string off with one hand, and then we'll get the torch. It kind of straightens out when it gets warm, and so I can pretty much say that it's going to be done by the time it kind of straightens out, except for there's a bend right there, but shouldn't be a big deal. So now what I'll do is I'll hold this on the table, and I'll grip the end, and grip it about here. I should be able to pull some of these winds off. That was a lot harder to do on the thicker strings. I don't know how well I can actually show this now, but you might be able to see here's the core. It's still intact, but we've gotten the winds off of it so that it'll fit through the tuning peg. Try to trim that off, and then I should be able to string this up over the little nub for the loop. So, I haven't shown this yet, but Jerry made this tool. He spent quite a bit of time yesterday making things so he could make this tool, and then he made this tool. And this fits over the end of these pegs so that I can tune this up. I just want to get a little bit of tension on it. I don't want to go crazy with it yet. Alright, so there's one string. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them. Probably not going to film putting on any other strings because I'm on 31. I started at 42 and I gotta go all the way down. Got a lot of strings left. So I'll bring you back once we get some more strings on here. Well, as you can see, I've got all the strings on this zither, and besides trying to tune it 100 times a day. I've also made this cover that goes on the bottom here, covers up, where the strings attach on this end. You can see it's black, it matches really good. I think it looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and attach that now. I got some new screws because the old ones were stripped. Well, now that I've got that bottom covered, this kind of thing, it lets you sit it, you know, like this, so I can actually sit it on my knee kind of and play it. I guess the only thing left to do here is to play it. I'm going to do that in the next clip, but that might be a little jump for me because I gotta get familiarized with it a little bit and make sure it's in tune. But I will be playing it next. Alright, well, I say this zither here is done. I'm going to try my best to play this. No promises on playing or tuning. And it's kind of quiet, so I'm going to try to pick it kind of hard. Since the furnace is running, I hope you can hear it. I think that's the best we're going to get out of this. These lower ones, they're meant for chords, so you could strum a chord and then pick. I'm not that good at playing it, and I'm sure it's not that well tuned at the moment, but I think that's how you're supposed to do it. That's not what we're getting out of me today, though. But I hope you enjoyed watching this zither kind of rebuild, restoration. I think it turned out really good. It looks really good. I think that new piece really matches. It fits in with the kind of old black that's already there. We did a lot of structural to the back, you know, making these what were 3 pieces back into 1 piece, and making it solid. There were a lot of places on the zither we re-glued together. You know, it's got strings on it now. You could play it. Well, if you were good at playing it, you could play it. So once again, I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did enjoy it, a thumbs up would be much appreciated, and even more appreciated would be subscribing. So, here's this old zither. Thanks for watching.